Hello, my name is Linda Keith. I am the founder and chief credit trainer for Lenders Online Training, where we help lending and credit professionals say yes to good loans and also, of course, say no to the ones they should not make. I am joined by David Stauffacher, one of our senior credit trainers. Hello, David.
Hello, Linda.
Happy to have you here. So this is a part of our K-1 and pass-through series. The question that came to us was, where do I find capital contributed by a single owner, and what do I do with it? So as often we do, first it's like where and then what. So David, where does she find capital contributed by a single owner?
Okay, maybe I should get my t-shirt out because I'm going to tell you it depends. It depends. I know everybody chuckles. We always chuckle about that, but quite honestly, it does depend. If I was using the 1065, which is for partnerships and the multi-member LLCs, I'm going to look at the Schedule K-1. I'm going to look at box L, it is, Linda. I'm going to look right there, and that will give me an idea as far as what type of capital was contributed by the single owner, right?
Is that
K-1.
box L for Linda?
Might be. It might be. Maybe the IRS knows of you, and they said, you know what, we're going to donate this one to Linda. So that's good. All right. So that's on the 1065. K-1, right? The individual owners will get the K-1. Let's talk about the 1120S. Now, understand that the K-1 doesn't have any shareholder shown of capital contribution. So we got to do something about that. We got to do, let's say it's kind of a little bit of a workaround. So this is the difference between the 1120S and the 1065. So if we have the full tax return, we have the full 1120S, we're going to kind of work our way back to the Schedule L, which is the balance sheet. If it is required, now there are some situations where a balance sheet is not required. We've touched on that on our K-1 series, as well as in our modules. So when we talk about 1120S, of what some of the limitations are, but let's just say there are. We're going to look for the M2 back in the schedules, and it's going to state on there capital contributed. It'll be a lump sum because it won't tell us individually, but it'll tell how much money went into the organization. So we still got to, if we're curious, we're going to probably want to know more. But I know our question focused about a single owner, but in cases when we have multiples, I just want to make sure that's a good tip. Understand that that is all owners that are contributed. So you might want to find more. The other thing, if there isn't anything there, another thing that has come up is, look at the balance sheet again. Let's kind of go back up to the balance sheet and look in the capital section where it says additional paid in capital. What can happen there, if money went in there, there is going to be an incremental interest or change between the beginning of the period versus the end. So if there's 0 and 0, we know that no money came in. But if there was a difference, let's say they had $50,000 that went up to $100,000, we do know that some money went in there. So that is a good sign there. So we'd want to know how much. We'd be curious as to why they would do that. And basically that would write down some questions in our mind to say, you know, what do we know about this type of company? Why is money going into that type of company? So a whole bunch of questions that can come up. So Linda, I talked about where it is. Now that we know where it is, what are we going to do next?
Yeah, and you actually started to speak to that when you said, you know, why are the contributions showing up? And we don't look at one tax return, right? We look at 2 at least, probably 3. And in a balance sheet, each one of them has a beginning and ending. So we actually have the beginning, ending, beginning, and we have 4 balance sheets.
Yes.
If we're looking at 3 tax returns. So the first thing to do in terms of what do you do with that is, if you actually are looking at the entity return, and again, you might be, because you cannot tell from an S Corp shareholders K-1 what happened. If you're looking at the entity balance sheets, then the question is, gee, are they putting it in every year? Was there just one year that they put it in? Do I know something about that year? Right? Do I know that that was the year that there was a flood downtown and everybody had to do major repairs? Or that was the year they were going into the pandemic recession or coming out of the pandemic recession, right? So it partly depends also on who you are lending to. If you're doing a consumer or mortgage loan to an owner, you just don't know that kind of information about the business. Whereas if you also lend to that business, or it's a long time individual borrower, so you've known about the business all along, then you might have a better ability to say, do I think that's recurring or not? Now, if you're doing historical cash flow, sure, count it, which means you count it against the owner who put it in and for the company that got it. So if you're doing both an individual analysis and a business analysis, it's going to wash, right? But for projected cash flow, take a look at 3 years, preferably 2. If you're doing mortgage, it may only be 2. Take a look to see, do they typically do that? Because as David alluded to, owners don't put money in on a regular basis, right? Nope. Take it out.
Take it out. Take it out.
Exactly. If they put it in, then are they buying equipment? Are they expanding? Are they trying to recover from some challenge, which could be a problem in the business? Like right now we're seeing tariffs and, supply chain and employment issues. Or are they just recovering from one specific non-recurring event, like a major bad debt because a regular client had trouble, but not all their clients have trouble, right? So we need to better understand, why were the contributions made? What does it tell us about their future plans? That does not help the mortgage lender who simply wanted to know, Linda, where do I find contributions? You can find them on the 1065. You cannot find them on the 1120S. And that kind of brings me to, oh shoot, I'm going to go off off plans here. If you know something about someone who's filing a 1065 and you count it against them, like actual cash flow for 1065, we've covered this in other live streams. It's your guaranteed payments plus withdrawals minus capital contributed. But if it was an S Corp owner, you would never even know it. You couldn't count it against them. What? So I'm not really going for fairness here, but I am saying that if you have information on one type of borrower that you never have on the other, and it's only the tax form they filed that gets you there, then decide, do I want to count something against someone who happens to be a 1065 filing entity or owner that I would never count against an S Corp owner in the very same circumstances? If that's true, and if it's significant, then just stop and think, okay, does one of the two of those answers make more sense? And if it is counted against them, then you need to add to your list of questions for S Corp shareholders, have you made any capital contributions? We want to be doing apples to apples when we possibly can. The IRS and their tax forms do make it hard to do apples to apples. We're thinking apples to oranges, at least it's fruit. Right. But that is one of the challenges we have. We simply have information for 1065, don't have it for the 1120S. What difference should that make to us? All right, folks. So that is the where do I find capital contributions? What do I do with them? We would be happy for you to contact us at Lenders Online Training /talk if you want to find out what we can do for you personally, for your team, for your direct reports, to provide that foundational training. We also be happy to have you ask your own questions. We answer them every single time to you. And then often that is what informs our live streams and our weekly blog post, which is an answer. So experts at lendersonlinetraining.com. And if you would like to get the weekly email, it always has the question right in the subject line. So you just delete it if you're not interested in that question, read it if you are, or pass it to your team. If your team needs it, then lendersonlinetraining.com /ask the experts. That would be us, right, David? Absolutely.
Yes.
Thank you for coming today. See you again later.
See you later, everyone. Bye-bye.